Okay, we should be recording. We're going to get started. So welcome everyone. Just to do some quick introductions, my name is Ricky Guerra. I'm a student success coach here in the Student Success Center. And with me is Kristen Bessler, one of the counselors for our TRIO Student Support Services program. And I'm joined today by two of my students that I've been fortunate enough to work with closely in regards to their graduate school, as well as fellowship scholarship applications. So first I'll introduce Sarah, who is a recent OW alum, as well as our first ever Fulbright U.S. student program applicant. She's still in the process, but she is officially our first student that has applied, as well as our student Anaya Burton, who is a senior. And Naya and I have worked together on some of our graduate school applications, as well as for her Knight Hennessy and Watermark scholarship applications. So again, welcome everyone. And quickly, if you'd like, I'd like to ask our students here, our student participants, to introduce themselves briefly, if they don't mind.
Yes, I'll go. So again, my name is Naya Burton. I am a senior psychology student here at Old Westbury. After my graduation, I hope to go to graduate school, particularly get my PhD in clinical psychology.
I guess it's me then. Hi, my name is Sarah again. I'm an alum. I graduated class of 2019, so I'm currently in my post-bac years right now. As Ricky mentioned, I'm applying to the Fulbright Scholarship, and I'm currently a semi-finalist. And like you said, I'm also the first one from Old Westbury, and I look forward to passing on my knowledge to all of you.
Awesome. Sasha and Krista, would you like to introduce yourself quick and just briefly? Hi, Judith.
Hello. I am
Heidi.
Sasha Leon, and I was a student at Old Westbury, a social work major. I'll be graduating soon, and I'm a social work major.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm one of the counselors in the TRIO Student Support Services program. I help students here with, along with like the advising and the academic counseling, but I also have helped students with graduate school applications and things of this nature. So Ricky, if you don't mind, I can drop in some TRIO information just in case some students here may be interested in applying.
By all means.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet everyone.
And Crystal, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm a psychology major and a junior. I'm hoping to be a marriage and family counselor.
That's awesome. So one of the first aspects we want to talk about is actually applying to graduate school. So Anaya, if you'd like to just kind of go through some of it, just as we've been working together, a little bit about the process, some of the things we encountered, and just overall your trajectory for your applications, kind of where you've applied, which kind of programs you've been looking into a little bit. We'll start there.
Okay, so I officially completed my doctoral applications last December. There were a lot of, when I first started looking for schools, there was a lot of things I needed to consider, where I wanted to be. In terms of like, say in New York, did I want to leave the state? Did I want to stay in Long Island? Could I afford to stay here? Could I afford to go elsewhere? Did they have the program I wanted? Were they still requiring GRE scores? What was the cost of their application fee? So all of those kind of culminated together in me coming down to about 8 schools that I eventually applied to last year. And I got some responses back, but I'm still just essentially waiting to see where I go.
Awesome. And Anaya, can you kind of just go through for our participants some of the standards that you were looking for? You know, we had discussed diverse faculty. How's the community? You know, what are some of the alumni outcomes? Can you just kind of discuss those factors as well in your decisions of where to apply?
Yeah. So with the doctoral program, it's important to figure out what staff is there, who might your PI be, which is your primary investigator, who you essentially be spending majority of your time with. So finding a school that had diverse faculty and students and environment was very important to me. I've heard some horror stories about people who have gone to colleges that don't necessarily suit their social needs. So the diversity in the community, the diversity among the faculty, staff, educators, and essentially what do their alumni look like? Do their alumni come back to the school? Do their alumni get as far away as they possibly can? What do their alumni look like? How many African American and minority students do they accept into these programs? All of this information can be found on their website. So those were a couple of very important factors to me, as well as, you know, like I said, I refuse to take the GRE because I think it is, you know, I have my own feelings of those statistical data points and what they mean and what they prove and what they perpetrate amongst different groups of people. So I really didn't want to take that. So I looked at schools that were not requiring that. I looked at schools that didn't require tuition essentially for a doctoral program, because I don't believe you should pay to be educated. But yeah, those are a few things that I came across as important.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. And it's just a culmination of all those factors. And then again, it's also you're applying, so there's no guarantees, but at least like knowing a focus of what you want. This is what I'm looking for. These are my criteria. I'm looking for the proper programs to make sure that they hit that criteria. And in addition to that too, you know, I encourage all my students to be able to have those same standards in place when you're looking at different fellowship and scholarship opportunities. So these opportunities, I can't even say in general, because each can kind of take its own niche. So whether that's participating in an internship-like program, offering financial support for continuing graduate studies, attending a conference, they take many different forms. But my participants here with Anaya and Sarah, Anaya has applied to the Nay Hennessy Scholar Program, which is directly correlated to her application for Stanford University, as well as the Watermark experience, which Anaya had a very interesting application where she submitted a video component, which is very different from the usual personal statement essays that we tend to see. And then Sarah had applied to the Barry Goldwater Scholarship, which is very prestigious for students that are looking to advance in research in the STEM fields, but also the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, which I think is one of, if not the most prominent fellowship and scholarship opportunity out there. So I'm excited for you to be able to hear from each of them and their own experiences. So why don't we start with Goldwater a little bit, Sarah, before we get into to the big one with Fulbright. Just your experience applying to that, campus nomination, what you went through, just kind of give our guests an overview.
Yeah, sure. So the Goldwater scholarship, I applied to that my junior year. So this is 2018. By the way, I majored in biological sciences when I was at Old Westbury, and I had a minor in women's and gender studies. So my primary career focus is, incorporating diversity into the STEM field, into science. And so the Barry Goldwater Scholarship is something that it's a 1-year fully funded scholarship for juniors. And so Dr. Nataro came to me after I participated in a few conferences, and she was like, hey, there's this scholarship. Do you want to give it a shot? Do you want to apply? She told me, I think that one person had tried for it before me. So I thought, okay, why not? If someone else tried, I'll do it too. And she was working with me mostly through that. And it was very daunting. I think that was the longest application I've ever filled out in my entire life. And even after doing Fulbright, I can still tell you that Goldwater was the longest application I ever filled out in my life. So that one, it was daunting. I had a lot of support from Dr. Nataro. It was mainly an online application. It had 2 parts. There was the primary application and then the interview. But going through your university, going through Old Westbury, there was a campus nomination. There were letters of recommendation to go through. So I had some great relationships with my science professors at that time who were able to provide me with some letters of recommendation. And I think the primary component was that by the time you were a junior, you needed to have a significant research experience. And a significant research experience takes a year or 2. So in order to even apply for this, you've got to be prepping for a long time. Thankfully for me, I was involved in research in the science department since my sophomore year. So that really helped drive my application forward. It was, I believe, a 6-month application process, but it was a really good experience for me. And I think transitioning into Fulbright, I think that was very important for me to see, for me to go through in order to be successful, later on.
And something I want to jump back to as well that you mentioned, and Anaya, please feel free to jump in too. How did you, and like you had said, you felt you were supported by Dr. Natara, you reached out to your faculty, but
Mhm.
to even get to that step, how did you kind of work through like those daunting feelings, Because that could, I think that could really stifle a lot of students and get in their
Yeah,
own way.
yeah, I think Anaya and I talked about this previously as well about, when you go and you look at these fellowship, these scholarship, even graduate school like websites, they do have a history of who they give them to. And a lot of the times you look for people like you. I'm at a state school, I'm doing research, I have these big dreams, and I'm looking for well, am I represented here? Do I have a good shot? And I think sometimes like I would see those lists and I would see all of these like huge schools, right? That's where everyone was coming from. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'll be successful here. And I think that was the most difficult thing for me, was thinking that for some reason people from those schools had maybe better experiences. But I think at the end, the process of actually going through the application, I saw that I actually did have something to put in every single box. And it wasn't that, any of us were lacking in anything. Like, we all had really great opportunities, even at Old Westbury. And I think that's really what helps you push forward, just to keep going and to keep filling that out and to keep seeing, I have everything that everyone else has. Yeah.
Awesome. And would you like to comment as well?
Yeah, totally agreed. It can be very, very daunting. And I think I'm lucky enough to be a psych major because you're surrounded by so many things that are um, that want to acknowledge that we are more than just students and researchers. We are people too. We have to take that moment to breathe and accept. We don't necessarily get those things and put all of our work into it. With the Knight Hennessy and Watermark scholarship, I thought the Watermark was going to be kind of like the better one. It was like, geared towards female and STEM and things like that. And it was a video one. I was like, that's great. What I do it. But I didn't get the Watermark scholarship. And then there was Knight Hennessy, which, like Sarah was saying, was also a longer process to do. The questions weren't necessarily like, okay, well, I've prepped my 4 years to do this. It was questions about me, questions I'd never asked myself. So that in itself made it a little difficult. But reaching out to Dr. DeLuca, who was sadly no longer here, Dr. Morris, even though, it wasn't a lot. Surprisingly, I'm talking with her more often lately about something completely different because she is an alumni of Stanford, which is where the Knight Hennessy scholarship was for. But I didn't get those. And it's one of those moments I think we all kind of have to grapple with, which is we didn't get that one thing we wanted to get. Stanford was my reach school, and I wanted to get in there bad. But I think there's a real growth in knowing the path that wants you, and in determining that. So yeah, that's my spiel on it.
And something that the three of us have talked about in the past, but I want to make it known for our guests here, is that thought of keeping that mantra, why not you? These students come from many different institutions across the country, internationally, and across many walks of life as well. But there's no reason why it can't be you. Like Anaya, like you had said, we're more than just students, we're more than just our research. Everybody's unique. So let's just say, I'm trying to think of an example. I don't get into Yale, but there's only one of me. So wherever I'm meant to be, they're going to get myself, not just the student and the participant, but Ricky Guerra, the person, Ricky Guerra with this particular walk of life, my background, my experiences. And just keep that in mind in whatever you pursue, whether it's graduate school, whether it's a fellowship or scholarship opportunity, why not you? Really don't let that kind of stifle your efforts in trying to apply for different opportunities in different schools. Apply to as many as you can. Anaya and I have talked about this. To not put all of your eggs in one basket is very important. Very, very important. And Anaya, I had a question for you as well. What was it like putting together a video presentation as part of an application? Because some of the typical processes that we go through, like Sarah, we did with the personal statement as well for Fulbright, is putting everything on paper, going over everything, having it reviewed by a peer, by the writing center. But what was it like kind of putting together an application through a different medium? What was that experience like for you?
It was a task in vanity. What I mean by that is, once I was able to get my words together, like the words I wanted to say, which in itself took a certain amount of time, I had to start considering, would I match with what I was saying? Like, would the aesthetic of me match with what I was saying? Mm-hmm. So I tried to, professional, wear my blazer, wear my nice dark lipstick, did my hair, very professional. And started to notice that the words didn't fit the same way when I was saying them out loud and being recorded. I had to adjust a little bit to make it sound and feel more real and honest. And of course, there's just the recording of 50 million times, trying to get the right angle, trying to get the right, lighting, trying to make sure my cat wasn't running around in the background or screaming. So it did add an extra element of challenge to do, but I think it opened me up creatively to the connection between my aesthetic and the things that I'm saying, and become more cognizant of those things. So it certainly was an interesting process.
And what I find interesting too is we always talk about trying to put your best self on paper so that way you jump off the page. But what's it like for them to actually see you, to hear you speak? I think that's very, very interesting in terms of trying to, when it's in a competition sense of an application. And one of the larger applications, not just in Goldwater, but Sarah, if you want to just kind of tell folks a little bit about Fulbright and your experience. I know there was a lot encompassing, but just, from starting the process to beginning the personal statement and getting into obviously auditing the French class as well was important. And then going into trying to find a placement, just kind of walk our guests through what that process was like a bit, and we can deep dive in.
Yeah, sure. That was a long process. That was something that you need. I need a lot of support for. Like, I cannot lie to you, cannot do that by yourself, because you need 3 people to recommend you. You need your campus advisory board. There was Ricky, there was Dr. Notaro. You need people abroad in that country. So the Fulbright Scholarship, just to go into it really quickly, it's a scholarship offered to students for a period abroad. It could either be 9 months to a year, 12 months. So it's in a country of your choosing. My country was Mauritius, which is in sub-Saharan Africa. So I was in contact with the I'm sorry, did someone say? Okay. I was in contact with the Sub-Saharan Africa group, and specifically, I was also in contact with the group in Mauritius, and that country is a very small island off the coast of Madagascar, and the time difference is 9 hours. So what that means is that, everyone all over the world, they like to work between 9 to 5. So I was up 2 a.m., 3 a.m., attending meetings with people, and because, these people, I want something from them. I'm the one that's looking for the enriching experience here, so I had to cater to their time, to their availability, and that was one aspect of it. But it was very discouraging. A lot of times along the way, I didn't have the full 1 year beforehand. It was 3 months before when I reached out to Dr. Notaro and to Ricky, and I was like, hey, I want to do a Fulbright scholarship. Is that possible? Like, in this time frame, applications are due in October. It's August. Like, can we do it? And they were very encouraging. They're very, very encouraging. Everything went very, very quickly. And there were many times where, Ricky was like, okay, this is your topic. My topic is studying domestic violence, abroad during the COVID-19 pandemic. And there were a lot of avenues I could go through this way. There were government opportunities, there, nonprofit opportunities, and there were private organizations that were doing work in this field. And his advice was, just, start doing some research, start Googling things, start learning about the country. And that's what I started doing. And there were so many times where I got so excited. Like I found someone's email, I got their phone number, and then I just heard nothing for a long time. And I got discouraged a lot. And he was like, you just got to keep sending them. Try this time of day, try that time of day, send them 10 emails, like, do whatever you have to do. And it's a very humbling experience, having to do that over and over again. But, it all did work out over there. And I did get multiple organizations to end up, supporting me at the end in this short time. And I think that could not have been possible without all the support that I had at Old Westbury, at my mentors. I had two faculty mentors, Dr. Kalish and Dr. Sarah Smith in public health and sociology. And I also found one professor on LinkedIn, actually. So I did a lot of LinkedIn stalking. I will tell you guys that LinkedIn is your friend. Please use it. There were times where I was just like Googling university, like University of Mauritius, Open University of Mauritius, like all these different schools. And then I found out that a lot of people from that country actually come here, to do to do our graduate school programs. And that's how I found a professor at Hofstra that actually was from there. And she ended up helping me learn a lot about that country, being, never having been there, being all the way in the US. And so I would say, use your connections. That's probably the biggest thing for applying to any of these scholarships.
And I really wanted to deep dive into those connections, but first you want to just talk about what it was like to audit the French course and just explain how you came to that decision to try to enhance
Oh
your
yes,
application?
of course. That's the one aspect I forgot about. So the language barrier, there, that country, they speak English, but there are a lot of countries, that you can do a Fulbright application to where you need to know the language. You can't go to Japan without, having some knowledge of the language. You can't go to, there are a lot of countries you can go to, but you need to put in the work to learn the language. And Mauritius was one of those countries where they didn't require you to know anything. English was their primary language, but they do speak two other languages. They have, regular French, and then they have their own Creole French. And they did say it would be very helpful for you. You're going to be here for 9 months. Like you should kind of figure out, how to say hi, hello, goodbye. Can you help me? Like, things like that. And so the Modern Languages Department was very helpful, to have me audit the program. I honestly didn't even know that the alumni auditing program was a thing until I got to this experience. And I would really encourage any alumni that might be watching this to definitely, if you want to learn a skill, reach out to Old Westbury, figure out what you can audit. So I reached out to the Modern Languages Department. I was like, hey, I'm applying to this fellowship. I need to learn French in like a few months. Can you help me? And again, they were very helpful. There was Dr. Stephen Barola who put me in his online French class. So this was, in the middle of COVID. So everything was still online, hybrid. It was kind of helpful because I didn't have to go too much out of my way to be there on campus. But I did have that support. And, there are other courses. I think there's a French minor also that I would be applicable to take if I wanted to. And yeah, it was quite the experience. And it's different to take a course knowing that you actually need to use the information. Do you know what I mean? Like this is something that has a timeline. Like I need to be able to know X, Y, and Z by August. So yeah.
There's a personal investment in there too.
Yeah. It's not just
And-
going for the A anymore. So yeah.
And it's going to be used, it's information that's going to be used in a very practical sense in a very short time too, So just kind of creating that sense of urgency, like you said, like this is happening. There's more than just getting the A, like I really need this. And I think between that and Anaya, you reaching back out to really connecting with Dr. Morris by chance, and Sarah forming, those relationships again with Dr. Kalish, with Dr. Smith, finding the other professor on LinkedIn, about really kind of building out that team of faculty. Because there's obviously supports, there's administrative staff like myself, like Dr. Nataro, using the professors and using those connections in the classroom for an opportunity that extends beyond. What was it like kind of building that little network for yourselves?
Um, it's it's one of those things where you kind of have to be, you've got to be assertive. You really have to put your best foot forward in relaying, this is something I want, this is something I need, this is something that will help me, advance me, whatever the case may be. And I'm coming to you for help, or to create this network, or, you know, provide me with this sort of rec, or help me in this area that I know you have expertise in. But all of that requires a certain level of persistence, being assertive with it. Because professors, whether they're your professor here at Old Westbury, or in my case, you know, trying to make connections with these, with the faculty at the schools I wanted to go to, you know, they tell you it's best to reach out to them, let them know who you are, you know, what your research interest is, let them know that you're looking at them, that they, that what they're researching is of interest to you, you know, just, hey, look out for my application, essentially. And you may not always get a response back. And sometimes if you do get a response, it could be, sorry, no, we're not taking any students for that semester, or, you know, your research interests don't really line up with mine. So you have to be assertive, you have to be persistent, and you just gotta know how to take it when they can't be what you want them to be for you. But it is helpful to also, like here, talking with Sarah and hearing her network, you know, faculty and professors, who knows how that could be of advantage to me. Okay, well, or whatever.
I think it froze a little bit. Is it just me? Did we freeze?
What you said, Anaya, about you have to be prepared to hear that I'm sorry, I can't help you. Like that hurts. At first it hurts. It's like, wow, I really did all of this, and I put myself out there, and sometimes people can't help you. But it's better to hear a no, I'm sorry, I'm not the right fit, than, you know, to have never tried at all. So I think that's really important. And there was one more thing I wanted to talk about with, I'm not sure if maybe you did this, and but I went through the Fulbright grantee directory to see, you know, who got the Fulbright scholarship in the country that I was interested in. And I went back, the results went all the way back to like 1988, I think, people that were going to Mauritius. And every year they have, you know, 1 to 2 people, on occasion 3. And the great thing about that was that their names were listed, their schools were listed, and it was very easy, you know, in this modern day, to just Google someone's name and find their contact information. And I was really in contact with 4 or 5 different alumni that were granted that scholarship, as well as people that tried but didn't make it to finalist status. And I think having the experience of others on my belt really helped me a lot, really helped me figure out what I need to do and what I need to not do, what I need to pay very close attention to in the program. So I would say, you know, strengthening your direct network is something that's always going to be very important. And in this day and age, it's a very important skill to possess.
Agreed. And I think just for both of you, and for those joining us, I'll just say, you know, for both Anaya and Sarah, I'm going to gush a little bit, so forgive me. But they're 2 of the most driven, not just students, but people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And it's been an honor to really see them along their journeys of applying for these different opportunities. And like we said, the work still isn't done. You know, final decisions haven't come in just yet, so we're still getting there. But whether, you know, it works out or not, I've been honored to be able to work with 2 very, very driven young ladies and 2 go-getters. And I think that persistence and that go-getterness, you know, that just extends into their search of looking for different alumni. And Sarah, like you said, it's so easy to pop in someone's name and find their contact information, you know, and having that willingness to know nothing may come of it. I may not get responses. And like we had said also, Sarah, you know, sending those follow-ups is necessary too, you know. And I think obviously you never know what can happen if you don't ask. You never know what could happen if you don't try. So whether it's actually applying or looking for these different avenues to really enhance your application, speak with faculty at a graduate school, speak with alumni from a fellowship or scholarship opportunity. It's so important to be able to make that step. And like we had said, relying on your support system. So building up that team on campus, between myself and Dr. Natara, we work closely with our students and working in conjunction with faculty, like for example, with Dr. Kalish and Dr. Smith, we were all kind of one network to really kind of help propel you forward. And it's so important to be able to utilize those resources here at the college because they're here for everyone. And it really starts with that initial first impression. Taking that initial class with the professor, stopping in and saying hi at a program like this with a staff member, to really build out those relationships for the future because you never know when they may come in handy. And I think, both I and Sarah can agree that they really, really came to fruition during this process about utilizing everyone available to you, as well as every available resource. And Sarah, applying to some of the different organizations for placement, would you kind of describe to the group, because you had said, I'm applying for a specific reason, I'm applying for this. What was it like from the organizational side, but they were kind of looking for and possibly accepting you?
Yeah, there were some people were very, very helpful, but they were very honest in what they could offer me. So my plan is to be abroad for 9 months, and I need, some sponsors. I need someone to work with me to kind of show me the ropes, and not just like random people. Like I need people that are very prominent in the field, as it has to be a worthwhile experience in order for them to grant me a Fulbright to go over there. And so I think I was trying to find my very last placement, and one of the questions I got was, when it came to universities, it was so difficult to find a professor in any university that had the time, to support a project like this, because, they're focused on their own students. They're focused on, propelling their programs forward. So they may not be thinking, why should I go out of my way to spend, a few hours every week for the next 9 months to help you? And that really came across to me as quite shocking. I'd never considered that a professor might ask me, like, well, what is the benefit to this university? What is my benefit if I help you? And then I really had to take a step back, because honestly, in that moment, I did not know. I was like, what is the benefit? I have no idea. Like, I see my own personal benefit, but I don't know what is the benefit to that country. And so, we later got back in a call, and I called Ricky, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what is the reason that I'm doing this? And, we really thought about it, and we thought about, okay, what are some pros for them in this scenario? Is it that, they'll get to work with someone from the United States. They'll get to expand their programs. Accepting a student from here also means that, schools here are more likely to accept a student from there, because we're building, that connection for each other. We're building a rapport, between SUNY Old Westbury and between that school. We're building publications, research together. But it took me some time to really have to take a step back and realize what the benefit of this was for everyone involved.
Mhm. And that was something I've learned too in my role in working with students that are pursuing these opportunities. Learning that an organization would look for, well, do we get credit on your research? How do we kind of build out that partnership? And that was something that I learned as well. Um, and some of the other things that I did want to mention is just making sure that, for each of you, making sure that you're part of your applications, that they're well-rounded. When we work together on personal statements in particular, there was a personal component to them, but also, how does that extend to myself as a student? One of the things that, whether this is for a fellowship or scholarship opportunity or for graduate school, when I'm working with students on their personal statements, and I will say as a disclaimer, I always recommend students either writing center or a writing/English professional to be able to really go in depth. But one of the things that I try to help my students with is including that personal narrative, as well as relevancy to what you say is an educational opportunity. What's your experience in that major? If it's a research opportunity, what's your experience in that research? And then making sure that it all culminates together at the end, how it all clicks, of how yourself as the person, as well as yourself as a student, would be a good fit for whatever program that you're applying to. And I think that extends past the personal statement, as well as an entire well-rounded application in general, as well as being a well-rounded applicant. And for some of these opportunities comes an interview component. And one of the things that I learned participating in a panel for some Marshall alums they had mentioned that in the interview, they were asked questions that they didn't know the answer to. And instead of panicking, they were honest. They acknowledged they didn't know the answer, and they were able to get back on their feet and not let it deter them for the interview, which they found out afterwards. Some of these organizations or graduate schools, if you're meeting with a graduate admissions counselor for an on-site interview, sometimes they don't expect you to know the answers, but they want to see, well, how are you handling adversity? How can you kind of stay on your feet in the moment? How can you not lose balance, lose focus, and be able to maintain and press forward? And they don't want anyone that's going to lie or pretend that they know all the answers, but just having that openness, that honesty, and being able to really rebound in the moment. Those are some of the aspects, some of the qualities that they look for in an applicant as well. So that's important to remember. And what I'd like to ask too, actually, in addition, Sarah, with the alum specifically, and even Anaya, whether it's asking a question to an admissions representative or even Dr. Morris or anyone else that you're working with, the importance of going in, knowing the questions you want to ask. Going in, if I know I have a meeting with a faculty member at 2:00 to talk about my personal statement or any other aspect of my application, what are some questions I want to ask? What are some things I want to know? And it's so important, I feel, to write them down beforehand, being able to go through them, because you can have a meeting or you can have a Zoom call with whoever. And then afterwards, because this has happened to me, wait, I should have asked that. Well, I forgot to ask this question. I asked A, B, and C, but I forgot D. Just going in with that preparedness, that readiness, I think is important. Would you two agree, disagree?
Totally. Definitely want to make sure to have something prepared beforehand. I think one of the questions for me, based on a lot of what I've heard about doctoral programs, is trying to just develop a human to human relationship with whoever it is. Because this person is going to be the person you work with for the next 5 to 6 years. And some of the stories I've gotten are, they send you to get coffee, you become the new lab person. And sometimes people have terrible experiences because of, the advisors that they're stuck with. So an important question for me is essentially, what is your work dynamic? Are you meticulous and a bit OCD like myself? In which, I'll do it and I'll send an email to make sure it's right, and I don't hear anything back for a day and I start freaking out. Is that how you work? Do you want stuff done quickly, or is this more relaxed? You get like a week or two to do stuff generally. I think that's a very important thing to do, is distinguish who you're going to be spending most of your time with when you are in graduate studies. The other side is just knowing who you're going to be talking to. Whoever your interviewer is going to be, if they are faculty of some sort, who are they? How long have they been there? What's their research interest? What is their kind of relationship around the college, the school? Those are all important things you want to know too. It's just as important for you to know your interviewer, and than it is for them to know things about you as well.
And I think a core question that ties all that together is, how are these people, how is this institution, how is this organization going to help me grow?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think being prepared is crucial. Before you go in, you have to know, why do I want to speak to this person? What are my goals here in speaking to this person? And I think for me, it's been very helpful to have, 4 or 5 talking points that really interest me, and making sure that I hit all of them. Other things will come up definitely in the midst of a conversation, but making sure that you really hit the information you need to know is crucial. But I think even if you forget something, I actually don't see that as a con. I think for me, every time I've forgotten to ask something, I'll normally send a follow-up email, and I'll be like, hey, it was really great talking to you. By the way, what do you think of this? And then, that keeps the conversation going in a way. So, there's ways to maneuver yourself around this, whether or not you forgot a point.
Yeah, and I really like thinking about it like that. And also another thing, Sarah, that you hit on too is, that courtesy. Hi, it was nice speaking with you. That follow-up email, whether it's applying for these kinds of opportunities or in an interview, it's so important to be able to keep that common courtesy. That sending a thank you card if necessary. So that was an important part that I really wanted to highlight there as well. And I like the way that you had mentioned, obviously we go on with questions, but what are the goals I want out of this conversation? What are the outcomes that I hope for out of this conversation? And also being ready if the conversation may take a different turn. If the opportunity maybe isn't for you, or maybe it doesn't look like it's going to work out, they can come back with something completely different and say, well, we know this program that may suit your interests. I have a colleague in this area, this part of the country that I think could really help or benefit from your research from you. So I think going in with an open mind as well, but I like going in with those focused goals, those focused objectives. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and just to supplement that, I think that actually did happen to me. At first, I kind of was just looking for anyone, to talk to, just to put my foot on the ground. And when I knew what my goals were, when I was first talking to her, I would be the one to be able to help me, because we formed this great relationship. But really, she wasn't a fit for what I was trying to do, and vice versa. But during that conversation, she was able to see my goals, my interests, my what I'm trying to do, and she referred me to talk to several different people from that conversation. So although that one individual may not be able to give you the direct support you need, they definitely, everyone knows someone. That's
Mhm.
yeah, the main thing.
It's a much smaller world than we think, whether that's internationally or even just here on Long Island. And before I ask our participants joining us if they have any questions for you both, I have one more question. Whether it's for graduate school, especially for fellowship and scholarship opportunities. When I first came into this role, I started doing my research because I had no experience in my educational background with Fulbright, Goldwater, Knight Hennessy, none of these opportunities, even study abroad. And what I noticed right away is there's a lot of information on those websites, paragraphs and paragraphs, different tabs. And as helpful as it was, one of the first thoughts that came to mind was, I could easily see students wanting to give up, this being information overload, not knowing how to digest this information, and bringing back those feelings like, Sarah, like you had said about like feeling very, feeling that it's very daunting, with both of you, so like feeling like, well, can I do this? Can me, a student at Old Westbury, fulfill all these requirements, put together such a rigorous application? And what I would like to ask you both is, how did you both navigate that, all this information for these different opportunities, and not let that psych you out with all the information that could be given? Because I think that could be very overwhelming for some students,
I basked in my OCD. No, I'm kidding. It was very helpful to have an Excel spread, an Excel sheet. It's just that simple. I did what was it, like a graduate school prep thing over the last summer. And one of the things that they gave us was just a template of a spreadsheet for the graduate schools that we were interested in. And obviously you can tweak this to fit graduate school or any other list of programs you may be looking into, because you can very easily and quickly get to, okay, this is all the costs of these, if that's applicable. These are the locations, these are the benefits, these are the disadvantages, these are the faculty that I can talk to, these are the statistical numbers that I find relevant enough. This way you have a quick, easy go-to where you don't have to feel too overwhelmed by the amount of data that they put on these websites, or even keeping track of these websites. Bookmarking became the other big thing that I started doing. I bookmarked everything because you find perfect information, it's all here, and then you can never find the page again. So having an Excel and just some type of storage for all of this stuff is going to be the lifesaver.
Awesome. And before we get to Sasha's question briefly and some of our other guests, Sarah, would you like to comment quickly too?
Yeah, I think with anything, in life, where there's a will, there's a way, right? So there was a lot of information. It was very daunting, but like Anaya said, I think at first you're like, oh my God, can I do this? You close the laptop, then you reopen it and you're like, okay, let me figure out how to process this. And I think having some sort of organization, like I had like a huge folder, just like Fulbright. And then I had mini folders in there that was like, okay, everything personal statement related goes here, everything letter of rec goes here, everything, that's actually part of the research can go here. And I think staying organized is the most important part. But I also do think support is helpful because it's not easy to look at all that information at once. And it is easy to kind of give up and be like, oh, well, this is kind of a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So, yeah, I think having a good support system and having a good organizational mindset is what's really going to help you push through that initial rut.
And taking it step by step, like we've said, with both of you in our, respective processes. But I'd like to ask Sarah, you had a question? I mean, Sasha, you had a question?
Yes. Hi. So we're talking about the process of applying for graduate school. The problem is if I'm looking for a deaf community that matches my,
Mhm,
the people that I will be, working with, and it really is hard to find a match.
mhm.
When I meet a teacher, for example, with Spanish who majors in social work, and we seem to get along, and it's a match. But the problem will be if I can really make connections in the deaf community in that place, in graduate school. So it's really not easy to make that fit with the rest of my goals.
And Sasha, I think that's a really good point. As you're having these initial conversations, I would definitely recommend reaching out to an admissions counselor at any graduate schools that you plan to apply to and asking point blank, is there a community here for the deaf community, for folks like myself that I can really get to know and not just build out my professional work, but socially, how would you support me? How would you support a student with my needs? And then going from there, if they have either programs in place or communities to be able to meet others as well, seeing is that part of the community, like we've said, having those standards. And I think, in that case, that should be a sticking point. How would you support a student
That's
with my
true.
needs, a student like myself? And really kind of using that as a good navigator to see what programs are the best fit.
Yes, I see. It's true that I have another deaf applicant that I'm working with, and the two of us are, trying together to answer those questions. And it's hard to find things sometimes. We try to help each other find a good match for a deaf graduate student, and it's not easy.
And Sasha, that's another point that we wanted to come back to as well before we conclude this program. I obviously want to answer any other questions as well. But working with other students, working with other applicants together, it's an application process, yes, but taking that competition out of it and really working together. Let's just say you find a graduate program that's a great fit, and the person you're working with, finds another program. Being able to share that with each other, sharing those opportunities, and getting through the application process together. So not just building support professionally, but building that peer-to-peer support as well, I think is very important. And that's something that, in my conversations with Sarah and Anaya, trying to encourage other students to work together in that capacity, being willing to share opportunities with one another. Between the three of us, I'll say myself and I and Sarah, if we were three bio students and I find a scholarship opportunity or a great graduate program for, it supports biology, being able to share that with one another, like, hey guys, like I found this cool opportunity, maybe we should all apply, and really kind of building out that community, that network, I think is something that I would like to see on our campus more for students that are applying to graduate school and different fellowships and scholarship opportunities, talking to one another.
Goal is to really get comfortable with the communication and the community, and to provide equality and equal access to student experience.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, Sasha. Does anyone else have any questions? And in the meantime, I'm going to put my contact information as well in the chat in case anyone has any questions after, or if you're interested, can't even talk. If you're interested in support in pursuing any of these opportunities, either now or in the future, you can always reach out to me as well for that support. So I'm going to put my email in there now.
I'll put mine too. I'm always welcome to hear from people.
Yeah, like we said, we want to hear from other students, talk to many of you that are beginning this process in the middle, or maybe have completed this process as well. Any seniors that we have here that have applied to graduate school, what that experience was like for you, and how can we use that experience to help benefit future students, just like this program. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Anaya. Give a couple more seconds in case. So we'll give a couple more seconds in case anyone has other questions. Like we said, we're monitoring the chat as well. But if there are no other questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, but especially to Anaya and Sarah for being gracious enough with their time and sharing their experience with all of us. And like I said, to many of you as you came in, this session is being recorded. So I hope it'll end up on the website, and I plan on sharing it with my students as they're beginning this process as a kind of good step-by-step walkthrough along the way, to
That's a
be
good
able to
idea.
hear from two students that have had this type of experience. So again, I thank them both for their time as well as their efforts in helping put this program together. So we can give them a nice round of applause quickly. We'll clap. And again, thank you to you all for coming this afternoon.
Thank you, guys. It was nice seeing all of your faces. Be safe, everyone.
Stay and be safe, be healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care, everyone.